Hello and welcome to this episode of Gimme Shelter Security in Azure. Today we're going to talk about the last piece of the puzzle as we go through Azure Active Directory and Identity and Access Management, and that is hybrid identities. My name is Dwayne Natwick. I am a Azure MVP and a cloud training architect lead for Opsagility and Skill Me Up, as well as a Microsoft certified trainer and regional lead for that program. You can find me on social media at the links provided on the slide. I welcome you to follow me on Twitter, as well as continue to follow this YouTube series and follow the YouTube channel for updates on the new videos. So as we continue down our path of zero trust model and defense in depth and all of our security features in Azure, we're going to wrap up this week our grouping of Active Directory and identity management services within the Azure environment with Azure Active Directory, and today we're going to talk specifically around the hybrid identities. And we talked about differences when we went into, I think, in our second video, we talked about the differences between Azure Active Directory and Active Directory domain services. But today we're going to really cover how now we can utilize those both together within our environment, as many enterprises are going to want to do. If you are not a company that is a cloud-first company or a new company that is just a startup, you generally have a very large Active Directory domain services environment. So how do we utilize that and utilize our cloud services to give the user environment the best experience in terms of how they're going to access their resources? And so with that, we have our hybrid identity. And this is a quick overview of, we have our hybrid identity. We have our on-premises environment. We have our Azure environment with Azure Active Directory. Then we have all of our cloud services. And those could be Azure services. Those could be Office and Microsoft 365 services, as well as they could be other SaaS services like Salesforce.com, as well as public cloud services like Facebook or LinkedIn and things like that. So all of those services and how those are utilized, and if we're going to allow those to be accessed through our corporate identity management system, we need to somehow tie those all together. Azure Active Directory handles and supports many of those cloud services and the ability to federate and provide access management to those cloud services. But how do we tie in then the on-premises environment so that we can take that on-premises environment and have a single sign-on experience for our user environment? And that's where this hybrid identity comes from, and the hybrid identity architecture. And you can see in this slide, this expands it out to another level here. And the key piece to this puzzle here is Azure Active Directory Connect, and how that synchronizes then our Active Directory domain services, domain controller server environment within Azure, within on-premises, and takes that to Azure Active Directory to have access to on-premises applications as well as the cloud applications. So to talk a little bit deeper around Azure AD Connect, it is a integrated service for taking your on-premises directories and enabling users and groups from those on-premises directories into Azure Active Directory. It then provides, as I've said already and alluded to, that it provides that common identity for your users for Office 365, Azure, other SaaS applications, and have that all integrated into Azure Active Directory. And we have several options to enable that hybrid identity. We'll talk about those quick before we show how it is set up within the domain controller and synchronizes with Azure Active Directory. So there are three key authentication options, and we'll have a slide on each one of these to understand those. There's the password hash synchronization. Takes our on-premises Active Directory identity and provides an encrypted version, an encrypted password hash for all those user accounts to Azure Active Directory. There's pass-through authentication, which just takes and utilizes the on-premises Active Directory for the authentication to the domain. And once that's authenticated, they have access to their cloud services. And then we have federated services, which is the Microsoft implementation of identity federation. So Microsoft becomes that federated identity provider and utilizes then claims-based authentication as well. So to look at each one of these in further detail, password hash synchronization is probably the more popular of the three and is actually the default when we set up Azure AD Connect. And the reason for that is, again, as I said before, is it synchronizes the passwords from the Active Directory domain services to Azure Active Directory. What that does then is those passwords are housed as well within Azure Active Directory in that encrypted form. So if for some reason then the connection to the on-premises Active Directory is temporarily down, users still have the capability, though, to utilize that password to get to their cloud services. So there's a much more improved productivity for our users in the case that there's a power outage in your on-premises data center or something like that. Users can still get to their cloud applications like their email if you're using Outlook through 365, as well as all their 365 applications, as well as any cloud applications that your organization's using. The only thing they won't be able to get to is any on-premises applications at that time. So it reduces then the overhead for help desk with calls for I can't get to this, I can't get to that, especially since most users probably on a daily basis are probably utilizing at this point a lot of their cloud applications more so than other applications, and they can then utilize all those applications while that problem is fixed on the on-premises side. Pass-through authentication, as I said, the on-premises Active Directory is the single source of truth for identity. And what it does then is the user signs in, they are verified by the on-premises Active Directory, and then it pushes that approval up to Azure AD and says, okay, this person's approved, they can get to their Microsoft 365 resources. So a little bit different there, because at that point now we have a potential issue that takes place if that on-premises Active Directory goes down. Every one of the services within the organization are now down, and users can't get to anything. So there's a little bit more from a administration standpoint and a security standpoint. They might pass-through authentication may be more beneficial for your organization from a regulatory and compliance standpoint, but from a user experience standpoint, there are some potential issues that could be created there. And the third then is the federation services, and now we're utilizing federated trust and proxy type login services where you're utilizing Azure Active Directory and Azure as the federation, the federated identity partner or provider for services. It provides then that federation to other web applications and services and applications in the cloud. So you can utilize that as well. That provides then trusted domains and enabling trust and things like that. It takes a little bit more configuration and potentially management overhead within your organization to set up the federated services. So keep that in mind. Generally, like I said, password hash is quick and easy. Same thing with pass-through authentication for the most part as well. Now we talked a little bit about the different services, those different synchronization types. One thing to keep in mind as well is how passwords work and how users create or change their passwords and where the single source of truth is for that. In a lot of cases, the single source of truth, when you're set up in Azure Active Directory Connect environment, that single source of truth remains the Active Directory on premises, but you can create that password right back for synchronization of passwords, as well as right back and allow users in Azure Active Directory to change their passwords and write that back to Active Directory as well. Without password write back in place, the passwords were synchronized from the on-premises Active Directory to Azure Active Directory, but not the other way around. So you can if you put password write back in place, then users can change their passwords in either platform, either area. So that's important to understand when setting up Azure Active Directory Connect. Are we going to allow them to do that, or are we going to just maintain our on-premises Active Directory as the place where they can change their passwords, and then that just the password hash authentication goes back up to Azure Active Directory. In any case, the on-premises Active Directory does always, in the hybrid identity environment, act as that single source of truth. So if there is a conflict in a password, it's going to be that default to that on-premises Active Directory domain service. And finally, before we get into just going through a quick demo on the setup of Azure Active Directory Connect, this diagram here is a lot to take in, but this kind of, from an organizational planning standpoint, takes into account how you might determine how you're what type of synchronization you're going to utilize for your hybrid identity. You can see, depending on what it is, it's going to take you down different paths. Something we didn't talk about is seamless single sign-on. We can, there is a little bit more configuration around seamless single sign-on to allow users to utilize that single source of truth with one password, and you're going to generally want to turn that on and have that available, as well as something we didn't talk about, as well as self-service password reset, decreasing the overhead with your IT department in getting help desk calls of I need to reset my password. And it's important when we talk about self-service password reset is that when you set that up, you set up different questions that are asked to the user to verify who they are for resetting their password. And something to take into account back to last week's presentation and video. That is not multi-factor authentication. That's just verification of your of you and things that so you can reset your password. It's outside of really multi-factor authentication as well. So let's take a look in the portal on how to set up Azure AD Connect real quick. So here I am in the Azure portal, as well as I am on a local server that is actually my domain controller, and you can see the domain is on. So I am in an Active Directory virtual machine, and to get our Azure Active Directory Connect synchronized, the first thing that we do is we need to download that packet into our environment. So what we need to do here is go in the portal to Azure Active Directory Connect. You can see it's not installed, so I want to download it. It's going to take me to the download page, and very quickly I will download the service and open that service, and we'll begin to run Azure Active Directory Connect. Let me minimize some of these windows here, and you can see it immediately goes into the install mode here. And first thing you get is accepting the privacy agreement, and we're going to connect it. Here we're utilizing just a demo domain. It's not a routable domain. It's not a public domain. So one of the things that we're going to see here when we're utilizing like a demo environment that's outside of our custom domain, and what we're utilizing in the public is using a .local. I'm not going to get any of my Azure Active Directory users to synchronize down to my AD account, but we will see users synchronize up to our Azure Active Directory, because they will be given then the public domain of the .onmicrosoft.com domain of our Azure Active Directory organization, which is a verified and routable domain within that environment. If you have your own custom domain that's been verified and everything within Azure Active Directory, as well as on your on-premises Active Directory, then those would all synchronize and everything would be good to go. But we can still go through the process here of setting up our organization and setting up Azure Active Directory Connect. We're going to utilize for this demo just the Express settings, but you can see we can customize those settings. Using Express settings, what they're going to do is they're going to default to the password hash synchronization rather than, so if you want to utilize pass-through authentication or federated services, you're going to need to utilize the custom setup. If you're using password hash synchronization, which, like I said, gives you the flexibility that if your on-premises Active Directory goes down, you will have still access to your cloud services, then that would be, then you can just use the Express settings. I'm going to grab my username and password here. So this first connection is your username and password for Azure Active Directory. So we're going to do that first. And it's going to verify that you're a global administrator. If that username is not a global administrator, you will get a fail here. Now we're going to connect to our Active Directory domain, and we can see here that it's this .local address. So I need to remember that this is ops AAD demo and password, and this is going to be my administrator there. So you can see here my .local domain is not added. If I had actually a real domain, a real .com or .net domain, it would then add that to my Azure Active Directory domain. It's not going to do that in this case, but we can again continue on and we can synchronize users. So we are going to continue without matching since there is not a verified domain within our on-premises Active Directory, and we're going to now get to our ready to configure, and here you can see what those Express settings are. We're going to install our synchronization engine, configure the Azure Active Directory connector. We're going to configure our connector, enable password hash synchronization, enable the auto upgrade, and we're configuring the services all on this particular computer. And we're going to start our synchronization process when this completes. So we're going to install this. This takes a minute to install, and then it takes a few minutes for the users then to synchronize their way up. So let's give this a few minutes to install, and then we'll take a look and we'll find the users up in Azure Active Directory. Okay, so after a few minutes, our configuration is complete. You can see we can now log into Azure or Office 365 to verify the accounts have been created. We have configured all the attributes, so we're able to now exit out of here. If we want to check our synchronization, we can go here to our synchronization service, and it will open here, and you can take a look at the status of things, and you can see that everything's been exported. The synchronization from our Azure Active Directory domain has been synchronized, as well as our local domain has been synchronized, and it has been a success. So we can now go into our Azure Active Directory and come back in here and look at our users, and we can see now we have some more users within our environment. And if we look at this directory sync, we can see which users have been synchronized. And like I said, because there is not a fully qualified domain for my Active Directory domain services, my existing users in our Active Directory, our Azure Active Directory, were not synchronized. But these users that are synchronized here actually came from the .local, and I can verify that by going to my local servers here and go to users and computers and look up my users here, and I can see here's Ben Andrews and Bill Jones, and those are the users that have synchronized Bob Jones. Ben Andrews and Bob Jones have come up, or Brian Jones have come up from my on-premises Active Directory. And we can see those people. We have Chris Green without an E came up. We've got Chris Green with an E that is in our Azure Active Directory. But like I said, those would synchronize down, and we would have all of them synchronized in a ideal environment where we have our fully qualified domain name that we're utilizing within Azure Active Directory, as well as on-premises Active Directory. So that gets us to the end of this episode on hybrid identity for Gimme Shelter Security in Azure. Next week, we are going to move ourselves away from talking so much about Azure Active Directory and identity and access management, where we are going to talk about Key Vault services within the Azure environment, and then we're going to continue on other security services that are in the Azure environment. But key thing around this all is that when we talk about any of our services within Azure and how we're securing those services, identity is at the forefront of all of this, and that's why we've spent now four videos around Azure Active Directory and identity management, role-based access control, and all of that, because every time you set up another service within Azure, you need to think and plan about how that is going to be accessed and what identity roles are we going to utilize for management and administration of those services. So thank you very much. Welcome you to follow me on any of the social media links on this slide, and I will see you next week.